All righty. Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Hope everyone's having a nice morning, nice afternoon so far. And those of y'all that are going to be watching later on, hope you're having a good time whenever you're watching. We have a new guest today that we've not had on before. I've heard from, and you might remember his name from some of the interviews we've had with Mr. Bill Walker, a Lancer, which our guest today flew with the Lancers, the 158th Aviation Battalion, Company B, 101st Airborne, aka the Lancers, as you can see from his shirt. And they were flying Prairie Fire missions up north for CCN. This was in the 70s. Stuff was getting very, very tough. It was always tough, but this time, in the war, it was quite dangerous for the airmen as well as the recon men. And Mr. Barry Beard, our guest, as you can see, he's going to be giving us a little bit of his biography before we jump into Vietnam. He's going to talk about getting in, where he went to flight school, such as that, and how he found himself with the Lancers, and we'll just take it from there. So, Mr. Barry, we're glad to have you, and the floor is yours, sir.
Well, Bud, thanks for having me, and I appreciate this opportunity. So when in 1969, everybody was being drafted, and I was in school, but I didn't care for school, and so I thought, well, I'll go ahead and I'll sign up for the draft, and then I can at least pick the date I go in. So I signed up for the draft, went in February 9th, and the next thing I know, I'm on a plane going to Fort Bliss in El Paso, and went to basic training there. And when you first get there, they give you tests, and I've always tested well. I'm not very good in school, but I could test well. And after I reported to the company, I got called into the CO's office. And of course, I don't know here from Sikkim about rank or anything else. And the battalion commander was in there, and he said, well, you've got an opportunity to go to one of the service academies, and we would like to get you to do that. And I had enough self-awareness to know that, one, I probably wouldn't pass, and two, that's not something I wanted to do. And if I did pass, I'd be 29 when I got out, and that was unacceptable. So I passed on that opportunity. And then he said, well, if you want to go to OCS, no, because that'll add another year to my enlistment, and I don't want to do that. But another test that we had to take was Morse code, and that started out slow, and I worked hard to keep up, but finally I got frustrated and broke my pencil and threw it down, threw my headset down, and sat with my arms folded for the rest of that test. So nothing more was thought about that until I got out of basic as an E3, and I got orders to go to Fort Huachuca, Arizona for 10 weeks of Morse code. Well, that was not anything I wanted to have anything to do. First, I didn't want to do the 10 weeks of Morse code. And then once I got out, I'd probably be carrying a Prick 25 in Vietnam, and I wasn't keen on that either. So I told them I wanted to go to OCS. They said, well, you can go to OCS, but you got to go to Fort Huachuca first and take your 10 weeks of Morse code. And that was grueling. I don't even know how to express that. And the only way I passed was the threat that they used on us that if we didn't pass, we were going to go to cook school. And that was certainly nothing I wanted to have anything to do with. So after that grueling period of time, I got to go to OCS. And while in OCS, they said, well, you want to take a test to go to flight school? I thought, well, my dad was a Navy pilot. I didn't even know Army had aviation. So I thought, well, okay, I'll take that test. And since my dad was a pilot, well, that'd be kind of cool if I could do that as well. So I was able to go to flight school. Once I got out of OCS, I had a period of time when I was waiting to go to flight school, and I was at Fort Benning. There was, I thought, well, I'll go to jump school. And what I was thinking, that just shows my thinking was blurred back in those days. And so, fortunately for me, they said, no, we need pilots more than we need airborne. So I got to go to Fort Rucker, Alabama. Fort Walters in Mineral Wells first, and got to train in TH-55. My last solo in that little aircraft is just nothing but a little dragonfly. I decided, well, I want to overfly Mineral Wells, but I don't want to let them get my tail number. So I started climbing, and I got so high I scared myself. So I bottomed the collective, and I saw myself coming down through 9,000 odd feet. I guess I'd gotten up to around 10,000 feet in that little thing. So anyway, I got it back down, and then I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama. That was one of the best times of my life. There, LANCER kicked off, and we didn't do a lot of reading, or I didn't. Most of us didn't. We were at the officers club, but the talk around flight school towards the end was, well, if you go up north in Vietnam, you won't have to fly at night. You won't have to fly formation. And that was the rumor. And that must have been started by the Department of the Army. So I signed up to go up north with the idea that I wouldn't have to fly at night and fly formation. Well, of course, I had to do both of those once I got up there. And so I then was attached to, or I was assigned to the Lancers, which it's a God thing. Bill Walker and I were talking on email today, and there's a brotherhood of that group that we shared a lot of anxiety, I guess, and a lot of war stories. But there's a brotherhood that nothing else I've ever done in my life will compare to, other than my faith and my family, will compare to that association. So, and then when I got assigned to the Lancers on my first, I was a butter bar, second lieutenant, and I had to take my in-country check ride, which was with a guy named Lance Ruck. And I got on top of the helicopter to pre-flight the rotor, and I was nervous as a cat, and I stepped through the greenhouse. Well, of course, I was stuck with Lieutenant L.T. Greenhouse for the rest of my tour in Vietnam. And being a second lieutenant, there was nothing lower on the face of the earth than somebody that had stepped through the greenhouse and was a second lieutenant. So that got me into the Lancers.
Wow. Speaking of Fort Rucker, right down the road from me now, Fort Novacell.
Right.
He does deserve it. I wish they wouldn't go changing names, but where did you with training? Where did it really kick in? You mentioned, I believe you said at Rucker, you heard about LANCER kicking off. When did it really set in that I need to be getting as good as I can in this thing, and B, we're about to be sent into the fire, so to speak?
Well, I never really thought about being sent into the fire, but I always thought about being the best I could be. I have a strong sense of self-preservation. And so I felt like the better pilot I was, the better chance I had of getting through whatever I needed to get through. So I don't think there was any one particular. And maybe the first ride in a TH-55 when I first got to Mineral Wells, Fort Walters, it occurred to me, okay, this is what you're going to be doing, so let's do the best we can do at it. So that's the one standout moment, I guess.
Did you mentioned the battery of the tests you had taken, and clearly you scored well because you became a pilot. Did you key in on, did you have any other ideas of maybe, did you want to go fixed wing? Did you want to try Cobra? Or were you set on being a slick pilot?
I didn't know how they may have taken, I don't remember how they selected people to go to gunship. I don't recall anybody from my class that went to gunship.
Wow.
So there was no set point where I decided I wanted to be a slick pilot. It was the
just
the
how it
result.
happened. Yeah. Wow. That and I mean that's very easy to see, because you got to think of how many, and especially in the time frame we're in, or you were in, I should say, Hueys had to be going down at a staggering rate. They clearly needed slick pilots as much as they could. So,
well, thank goodness, because that kept me from having to go to airborne school.
There you go. There you go. And how wild of you to want to go to airborne there as you're getting ready for flight school. That's amazing thing.
I was gung ho back then.
Oh, it sounds like it. I've not read this book. One of our viewers has brought up, and I've got it. I literally just got it. Robert Mason's book, Chicken Hawk. I've heard that is one of the best chopper pilot books written on Vietnam. Have you by chance read that book?
I have not.
Okay. Supposedly it's outstanding. I'm going to read it because I've got a few chopper pilot books I'm needing to read. We already have a question here from one of the viewers, which is always a good one. Is hovering the hardest thing to learn in a helicopter?
Absolutely. And you'd see 3 or 4 helicopters at some point of the runway, and they'd be at an easy hover, and then all of a sudden you'd start seeing them peeling off, and you'd know that the IP turned it over to the student. You'd practice with a ping pong ball and some string. It was hover is absolutely the hardest thing in the world to do.
It would seem like it, because when I see footage of the guys and they actually show the cockpit, and you've got the collective and the joystick, whichever way, it's unbelievable. And yet you guys get so good, y'all can get right there in the trees with them and get right above the water. I mean, it is unbelievable what y'all can do with those things.
Well, you learn to think about the movement, not think about the helicopter, not think about your hand, because what you do is you try to overcorrect. And so you don't think about that. That was the best advice I got, was just think where you want to be and let your hands and feet take you there.
Wow. Was there a specific instructor pilot in all of your time being before you got your wings and everything that stood out? Any particular one, or were all of them top notch?
They were all top notch. Towards the end at Fort Rucker, we had, those little TH-55s they were underpowered, and I weighed probably 200 pounds, and he probably weighed the same. And this is why he stood out, is we'd have to bounce it down the runway to get enough lift to get that thing off the ground, because we were a couple of big boys.
Wow, 200-pound men in one of those. That's I bet that was a sight to see, y'all getting
Oh,
in
it was.
there. Oh man, oh
It was
man.
crowded in there.
Did any of your fellow classmates, did you end up seeing or being in the, did they end up being in the Lancers with you, or did you not see anybody ever again?
Well, apparently they weren't as foolish as I was to accept that notion that if you went north, you didn't have to fly nights or formation. And they ended up, only one guy ended up in the 101st that was in my flight class, or that I knew of. There was another guy, he got killed, a guy named Webb that was up north. So there's only three of us that I know of.
Wow. Okay. Training. Jason Holmes was curious. Where did you rank in your training class? We've heard one pilot talk about when he got his license, and he called a license to kill yourself.
I think I must have ranked somewhere in the middle. I don't recall there being any ranking other than how you ranked yourself against others. But I wasn't the best and I wasn't the worst.
Right there in the solid middle.
Right.
There you go. Best place to be. Best place to be. So when everything is ramped up, y'all trained, you've passed, you're going to Vietnam. Are y'all going home for a little break? Are y'all going to a base and straight to Vietnam? What's the transition to get to Vietnam like for y'all?
Well, they gave us a month to go home, and you feel that month you're busy that month getting everything in, both good and bad, I guess. But I do when I left out of Oakland. I'm from Houston, so I flew to Oakland, and I had a buddy that was my oldest friend. He was in Navy Reserve, and he was in medic school. Him and his wife lived there in Oakland, and I was flying out of Oakland, so I flew in, and they kept putting me up for a couple of days, and they gave me a parting gift of a fifth of Cutty Sark.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I ran into Aaron Brown on the flight, and we got into that Cutty Sark in Yokota, Japan, as we were going into Vietnam. And then, of course, as soon as we got to Vietnam, first place we went to the Officers Club. So that was our adjustment into Vietnam.
Wow. Did you guys come into Tan Son Nhut, Saigon, or where'd y'all?
Cameron, I think.
Oh wow, Cameron. Okay. And was it that stereotypical thing we hear of the oppressive heat and smell blasting you as soon as you got off the aircraft?
Well, the smell, I don't recall the heat so much. I was numb, but the smell, I do. That overcame any numbness I may have had.
That's what we've heard. It was quite the attack on the senses, as you could say.
Yep.
So when you first get there, you kind of go to the officers club for a little bit, and what's it like to find out, or not? What's it like? What are you going to do to get up north, or where do you find out you're hooking up with the Lancers?
Well, they give you I gave you like a preference card, so I asked to go north. I don't recall asking to be in the 101st, although I'm thrilled that I was. Yeah, so, but I did apply or I volunteered to go to fly Loaches. Well, they said, well, we don't need Loach pilots. So, okay, fine. So I go up to the Lancers and become a slick pilot. So,
Wow. And weirdly enough, as soon as you said the word Loach, this question popped up. Jay was curious, did you ever want to fly a Loach or a Snake?
well, what was interesting about that is they said, well, we don't need you, but we may need you later. So 6 months into it, they said, well, do you want to fly Loaches? And well, no.
Not now.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I was embedded in the Lancers, and there's just I had no interest in going anywhere else or doing anything else. So, fortunately, I passed on that opportunity as well.
I've got one of the logos and business cards I wanted to show off. This has got the guys from Iraq and
Right.
all Afghanistan, I believe. But
Yep.
there's the Vietnam logo right here, and that is the updated one that the new school guys got the permission from the Vietnam guys to use. So the Lancer legacy is still going strong, as far as I know.
We love our younger Lancers, and they seem to enjoy us. At one of our dedications, one of a guy, Charles Graybon, who was with me in Vietnam, he said, the only difference between us and these young guys is they're better prepared than we were. Yeah, that was a dedication of our memorial. And one of the younger Lancers said, yeah, we train for 9 hours before we leave. We may stand in front of our helicopter and they'd give us a map and off we'd go, but or a frequency to tie into Covey. But there was no, we were not prepared like they are. I mean, they had simulators. It's incredible what they do before they ever launch.
Oh, it's the pilots of today, both conventional and then the special Task Force 160th guys, the Night Stalkers. I mean, you can't get better than American aviators today. I mean, it's been that
we're
way.
The progenitors of the 160th.
Y'all are.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, absolutely. Colonel Jacoby was sending me some information about that, as a matter of fact, which blew my mind. I'd always curious about where they came from.
Right.
And as we'll hear, you'll kind of see why they were the forefathers of them. When I forgot, this is Mr. Gosh, I'm blanking on his name. I'll get it in a minute. His page, or his picture. Is this what you first see when you get up north, when you walk in to check in with the Lancers?
I don't recall that. I don't really recall checking in as such. I just the first thing I really remember is stepping through that greenhouse, and I may have gone blank, from anything before that.
Wow, that's Mr. Gary Whitty. I knew I'd get
Oh, yeah, Gary. He is a genuine hero.
I love, I'm so thankful, guys. I first got in touch with the Lancers and Mr. Barry, thankfully, by Mr. Jacoby, Lieutenant Colonel. I believe he's Lieutenant Colonel.
Retired, yeah.
Yep. And he graciously allowed me to be in their email chain. And I just get to sit back and see these guys reminisce and share photos and all of that. So that's where I've been able to get in touch with men like Mr. Barry, Mr. Bill Walker, and Lieutenant Colonel Jacoby. Just thankful for that. And some amazing stories in there from all of you guys, and especially Mr. Gary and Mr. Bill popping up. Yep. When you get north, what because we always hear, of course, everything's different. You kind of said no check-in of any sort. Are you kind of shown around? Do you walk in and just get pointed to the to the hooches, or do you got somebody that comes up and kind of takes you under their wing, so to speak?
Not as such. I'm sure somebody showed me where I was going to live, but one of the blessings was the experienced Lancers were fabulous mentors. Uh, and one in particular, warrant officer Charlie Farmer became my primary mentor. Now I will say, John Donaldson gave me my excuse me in-country orientation, and that is a day I'll never forget. We flew day, night, formation in the mountains. I got to see 50 caliber tracers for the first 51 caliber tracers for the first time. Yeah, it nearly caught a guy wire at Quang Tri. Yeah, it was a day and that helicopter is at the Museum of Flight in Seattle.
Oh, okay. That's the one that the lieutenant colonel sent me a photo of when all of y'all were there, or a few of y'all were there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them there. Yeah.
Wow, wow. And did you say who did you say gave your checkout ride? Thompson?
Well, our in-country orientation was John Donaldson.
John Donaldson. And who was the name you mentioned at first? Charles Thompson?
Charlie Farmer.
Charlie Farmer. Okay, okay. I was trying to see if I had a
Charlie
photo.
Farmer taught me how to take off backwards, among other things. But my first attempt at taking off backwards, we had to clean our pants out. We had to change underwear. It was, but I got better.
Wow. Okay, I've got a picture of Mr. Charlie right here. Hang on one sec. Or you can verify. This says it's Mr. Charlie, but let's just make sure. Right over here. Well, I can't. Let me just save that and bring it up.
There's John Donaldson.
Let me pull this up. This says.
Yep, that's him.
Wow, excellent. Okay. That is wonderful. And he I mean all of y'all look pretty young. I mean there's a few older gentlemen, but what was the average age of you guys?
I was 20. I just turned 22. Well, I was 21 when I got there and turned 22 while I was there. I would think somewhere 20 to, and they were younger, but the majority were 20 to 24 probably.
Jeez Louise. Were there any still? I know the older guys are usually in points of authority and such as that, but did y'all have any old heads still flying, so to speak?
Well, we had one guy. He wasn't old, but he had been there a long time. A guy named Powers. We called him Coach, and he had been there, I think, 2.5 years before he finally went home.
Holy moly!
Yeah, he was somehow I became a platoon leader, and the CO came to me and said, "Well, he wants to extend for another 6 months." No, he needs to go home. And so he got sent home. Well, sure enough, when I got back to Fort Hood, he was there, and I was sweating bullets that he was going to be mad at me, but he wasn't. And he got out and became a Houston police officer.
Oh.
And so I'm driving down the freeway, and I see a police car pulled over, giving a guy a ticket with 3 prisoners in the back seat, and that was Powers. He was the most gung-ho guy in the world.
Holy moly! And I know guys that's just like the SOG guys. They get it recon in their blood and want to keep going at it. But I mean, y'all saying no could effectively probably saved his life. I mean, y'all can only run the gauntlet so many times before.
Right, and it does things to people. So, but he has become a very productive member of society, and I've seen him since then, and
Is he
good
still with
guy,
us? Is he
huh?
still with us?
Yes, well, as of a few years ago, he was a motorcycle cop in
Oh,
his 50s.
wow. Heavy duty.
Yeah,
Wow.
he was quite a guy.
That is amazing. Okay. What is what's the I mean, the first day and all that, you're moving in and all of that, but what's your first real day on the job, shall we say? What's that like from waking up? Do you shower? Do you go eat and then go to get mission briefing? What's going
Huh.
on?
Uh, you know, my recollection is you get awakened, you get told what aircraft you get, and you never got a briefing as such. You're told what you're going to do. Uh, you know, John Donaldson. Anytime you were a duty officer, you just threw something in his room to wake him up. You did not go in because it could get rowdy. But yeah, we would be told to go. And I don't really remember how that played out. That's a good question. I have to think on that. Maybe somebody can help me.
I
Well,
would.
yeah, they'd say go to CCN. You got to be so and such, and you'd get different missions throughout the day. And uh, typically, if you pulled a CCN, that was going to be an all day proposition.
That's what I was thinking. Were y'all doing? Would some days be non Prairie Fire, or were you strictly a Prairie Fire Lancer?
Oh no, we yeah. There were times that they didn't call Prairie Fire. They were engaged, but they didn't call it Prairie Fire. They just called us in to get them. Uh, but you might insert them and somebody else pick them up. So uh, you didn't have continuity, and uh, you know, I, yeah,
So
that's
you're still flying. You're flying SOG missions. You're not getting all the Prairie Fire code. Prairie
right,
Fire emergencies, but you're still flying SOG inserts and extracts and the like, even without
right,
said Prairie Fire emergency being declared.
right. I mean, that's when they bring in the fast movers or the
The whole armada coming
yeah
in.
the heavy fire and so
Wow.
forth.
So do you what is you've done you've managed you've taken care of your checkout, your in country checkout flight, um and the Lancer checkout flight. What is your first day of flight like? Are you immediately getting Prairie Fire work, or do you got a few in country kind of warm up missions, shall we say, in quotations?
Yeah, I'm going to say I've got into, well, you didn't know once you were assigned to a CCN day, you didn't know what that day was going to bring. It could be a prairie fire, it may just be an extraction, it may be resupply, it could be any manner. So, seems like that was pretty early in the process. I didn't get into a prairie fire, I don't recall, early on. Uh, but we flew out of Quang Tri a lot. Uh, but that first day was with Mr. Donaldson, and the first thing we had to do was take this reporter who told us he wanted to go to Fire Support Base 1, and we knew that was abandoned. And we dropped him off at Fire Support Base 1. And we hadn't left him too long, and they were calling us to go get him. there's a backstory to that, but we went back and got him quickly, and we had some MACV-SOG guys, and they wanted to go up on the border. There was a armory, NVA armory with a big NVA flag, and everybody wanted to go up and see that. And so we'd go treetop level right up to the river, and then pop up, and then kick in right pedal and drop back down again right quick and get back to the tree line. And we were able to make them throw up. It was part of their orientation as well, because they were new guys.
Now, is this the NVA flag that is on literally on the river where that little building is? That
Right.
I thought I heard that either y'all or one of the Pink Panther Cobras either knocked it down or tried stealing it. Was that y'all?
No, or well, not that I know of. We had some respect for them, but yeah, there were several people that would. I mean, that was they knew it was a magnet for pilots to. And then that same night, that orientation ride was 12 or 14 hours. It was a long day, and I thought, my Lord, I'll never make it through this. I can't. I don't think I can withstand this. But it wasn't always like that.
Wow. I mean, the hours y'all put in, and it's bad enough when you're in action, you're getting fire. It's the adrenaline dumps going crazy, but I can imagine there's some long, boring days of some stuff not going on, and you're just up there going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yep. Yep. It was there was from tedium to boredom on some of those, but flying is certainly less boring than anything else, and we did a lot of it. I mean, we were constantly getting waivers from the flight surgeons so that we could keep flying.
Oh man, wow. So with what was your first shall we say real contact with a SOG team? Were you doing a insert? Did you maybe run into some of the guys just when you were up at CCN getting ready for a brief or what have you? Or
yeah, so a lot of those there wasn't the adrenaline rush, nor were they. And we're going to talk about RT Kansas later, but you don't have the documentation. So, your memory is, or at least mine is fragmented. And I'm trying to think. The first time that I recall the SOG team engaging was kind of a coincidence. We were just going in to pull them out, and when they threw smoke, they hit this NVA guy in the head, in the helmet, and they hurt it, and you could hear him on the ground, and so then you hear some machine gun fire, and this is coarse, but it's war. And he said, well, we greased him, and that was but they were that close.
That is insane.
So when they threw smoke, yeah, they hit him in the pith helmet.
God, boy, I bet that was. Oh, I can't even imagine.
They were laughing. I mean, it's war. I don't know what to tell you.
Now, was this? Were you picking them up in Laos, or was this an in-country?
They were in country. They were out on the border. I mean, we always flew around Asia, the Asia, We went in Laos a few times,
Jeez.
but not every time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, heck, some of your notable, well, one of your big incidents and SOG's big incidences took place right, a few miles off the DMZ that we'll be getting to here in just a minute. What we're always, guys, if y'all have got some more questions, go ahead and start getting them in. Before I ask mine, one of the viewers had a good question. Jay was curious, did y'all support the LERPs out of Camp Eagle?
Not that I recall. I ate a lot of LERPs, LERP meals. That was a delicacy as far as I was concerned. But no, I don't recall doing that.
That's were were y'all were at Camp Evans, correct? Or
Yes. Well, yeah, primarily we were at Camp Evans. We flew out of Quang Tri as a company. Headquarters was at Camp Evans.
okay, I was just curious about that because I've got as you can see right here. I wish I need to get where I can zoom in, but there's some good photos of Camp Evans, the maintenance facility, and
Right.
such as that here. It's very. I'll share this in the show notes, guys, because the Lancers have a absolutely amazing history site with not only photos but some great Lancer stories on there. Oh, Jay had one more. Did you operate in the Rung? I'm not familiar. What
I'm
is?
not familiar with that either.
Jay, could you help me out with that? I'm not even familiar with that. Um, Very interested to know what that's about. So when you're, I've got a question since while we're waiting on some of the viewers to get some. What was we hear of the 38s? Some of the other Prairie Fire pilots would up their armory. The Covey pilots would get some machine guns or a Car 15 if possible. Did the chopper pilots do the same? Did y'all carry a Car 15, an M16 for the event y'all went down and had to E&E or?
Yeah, there were all manners of weapons that were used to. I wasn't as sophisticated as some of the others. I think I just had my 38 and maybe an M16, but that was all I had. But there was Thompson machine guns and over under 40 millimeter grenade launcher M16 or 7.62. Everybody had their own style. I just never considered getting shot down. So
Yeah, you're not worried about being on the ground.
yeah, that wasn't a particular consideration of mine.
Yeah, if you're on the ground, something went wrong that you weren't wanting to happen. So,
Right, right.
um, well, speaking of that, as good as you were, and as much as you tried to counteract the negatives coming your way, did you ever get shot down or get close to going down?
No, I was blessed in that regard, and you know, we would. Part of our catharsis was we would, if you got shot up dramatically, you would go to the officers club and you'd have to recount your story sitting in a flight seat and wear a chicken plate that a guy had been shot. He had been hit in the chicken plate right where his heart would be, and it shattered it. But that became, we'd wear that and have to recount the story. And I was always disappointed that I couldn't have the opportunity to recount a lot of stories because I just didn't get shot up that much. It wasn't that I wasn't there. It just, I didn't, for whatever the reason, I didn't. So that's why I say I was able to walk among heroes
That is
without
that's
being one.
That's some good work, man. I mean, I'm sure you were taking some pings and all that every now and again, but for you not to ever get close to being shot down or whatever, you you were you were doing good work and having the good Lord watch your back, so to
Yeah,
speak.
there were times I was convinced I was going to get shot down, but it never happened. So
Thank the
I'm
good
thankful
Lord.
for that. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Oh, here's a good question before we start segueing a little bit into because good God, we're already at 45 minutes here. Um, Jason, great question because these guys don't get spoken about enough. Can you talk a little bit about your crew chiefs, the maintenance men? It seems like they had their hands full with what was going on.
I love that question, and I'm thankful that it gives me the opportunity to express my appreciation for those guys. I don't know that I had the appreciation at the time because you'd go out and your helicopter was ready to go. You wouldn't know how, but it was, and that was because of the hard work and efforts of those guys, and they always worked. The maintenance people, uh, all of, and so I think we've all gotten a sense of we were a crew, and everybody had their responsibilities, and everybody carried them out to the best of their ability, and I'm always appreciative of that.
I mean, we've heard, guys coming in. I'm blanking on who we had from another. Well, the Sea Wolves are notorious, but I'm blanking on the Army unit. But they'd come in and there'd be 30, 40 holes in the bird. It needing a new rotor and thinking they're going to have to demolish this thing and get a whole new bird sent in. And sure enough, the next morning they'd come out, walk out, and they'd see their head maintenance man that they were close with and just be in utter shock. And he's like, "What do you think?" He's like, "How did y'all do this?" He's like, "Stayed up all night and made sure y'all were going to be able to keep this bird as much as y'all been with it." And that, I mean, just working magic in those shops.
Yeah, well, they just put that 100-mile-an-hour tape over the
Oh
bullet holes
yes.
and head out. I mean, and according to Bruce Naismith, the Lancers at one time had more tree strikes and rotor replacements than the whole rest of Vietnam, just because they were going into Hamburger Hill. This was before my time, but I do our outdoor movie theater were rotors that had been
Taking off, damaged and taken off.
damaged, and so they were our seats.
That's really, I did not know that. That is very interesting. Now I'm gonna see if I can find a picture of the rotor seats that y'all had. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Uh, Jason also said he likes the expressions that the crew chief only loans an aircraft to a pilot.
Well, that's a true statement, I'm sure. I mean, those guys, they were very protective. Now, I will say, my crew chief, on the other hand, he, I went out to the aircraft, and on my door, he had taken shoe polish and put "Beware greenhouse at controls" with a skull and crossbones. I made him wash that off before we took off, but
And guys, if you're wondering, he actually picked up the nickname Greenhouse amongst the guys, so that's
right,
why he put "Beware of Greenhouse."
right.
That's amazing. So our how many, as we're starting to get in here with the last question before we transfer into some of the last missions before we let you go, um, what's your full loadout for a mission? You, the co-pilot, a crew chief, and is there another, or is it just three in the aircraft with y'all?
No, there's a gunner, so it's four
Okay.
crew, and we could pick up 7 packs if they weren't too big. it seems like we were able to get 9 at one point, but you get as many as you could.
Holy crap, that's a load full on a Huey. Did this will end up coming up, but was auto rotation practice regularly amongst you guys?
Yeah, when you're in flight school at Fort Walters and you don't know here from Sikkim about what you're doing, you'd be and you don't know how to talk on the radio, and you got a million of these little things darting around, these little helicopters, and so you're trying to talk to the tower and trying to tell him you're on base, and the next thing you know is you hear some cussing, and you know that the IP has cut the throttle on you, and you're going into auto rotation. Now, I don't recall in Vietnam that we practiced that much. I know my main concern was losing my tail rotor, and we did practice, and low or hovering auto rotation. That was trickier than you would imagine. But a standard auto rotation from altitude with a good clear landing area, that could actually, you could make that a softer landing than with power.
Wow. Okay.
Now, you don't always have a good clean landing area, and
absolutely, yeah. I mean, sometimes.
But if you had a runway, it was a soft. If you did it right, and most of us did.
Wow. Yeah, we're gonna hear about some tough stuff going on here. I guess we can save that. Well, actually, since we're about to get into everything kind of ending and you really getting into some nitty gritty stuff here, would you like to, before we get into the more heavy side, end it on a light note with telling us about sadly maybe the chopper pilot didn't forget, or he just didn't realize that how low the strings were with the recon team, and they may have drugged the team a little bit, and y'all had to actually learn what it was like to ride ropes?
Well, yeah. So we were coming back in from an extraction, and we had to use the ropes. And there was a captain who will remain unnamed as the AC, and of course, the whole crew's responsible. But he forgot that those guys were on the ropes, and the ropes are down 125 feet or thereabouts. And so he started his approach without consideration that he's got guys on ropes. And he was, of course, we saw what was going on, started screaming over the radio, pick them up, pick them up, pick them up. And, next thing you see is he got them back up again, but he drug them through some concertina. Nobody was hurt, seriously. I think there was some skinned up. There wasn't any serious, but they thought, well, this would be a good opportunity to show these pilots what these guys are up against. So they hooked us onto the rope, and it so happens that I'm on the ropes with that same captain that forgot that he had those guys down there. And the warrant officer that was flying, who will remain unnamed, he didn't like that captain anyway, so he was going to really put it on him. I swear that we went up to 10,000 feet. Now, everybody's told me that's preposterous, but that's my recollection. And, I remember, you're hanging from, and this, these guys, it does give me a great appreciation for what they went through, but you're hanging there with a little old nylon stabo rig and 2 D hooks hooked into this. And, once I got up over 100 feet, I thought, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Nothing I can do about it. And so I started having fun. And I thought, well, I'll just act like I'm Superman and put my arms out and like I'm flying. And then the two, the lieutenant and the captain below me, they were crying, they were screaming like little girls. And I don't mean to be pejorative to little girls, but they were acting like, I mean, it was funny. And so I took their ropes and started wrapping them around. And, once I let go, then they started spinning back out again. And that added to my entertainment. And then we started coming back down from altitude, and he dumped us in the river. So yeah, when that was all over with, we had a full measure of what it was like to be on the ropes.
I mean, when we talked to Mr. Terry Cadenback, who's on here with us, and the recon men, I mean, you can go from it being, 100 degrees on the ground with 90% humidity, and you're just boiling sweat, get up to even
Freezing.
2,500, and guys get back and icicles are on them.
Yeah, well, it was something like that, because we did get to altitude and it was cold.
I can't
Fortunately,
imagine.
he didn't dump us in the river first, I guess.
Yeah, thank goodness. Boy, I can't imagine what that must have been like your first time getting up that high, and
Well, you're
especially.
completely helpless. I mean, you're just hanging there with those 2D hooks, and you can't climb up, you can't go, there's nothing you can do. You just ride it out.
I am not a fan of heights, and especially being only strapped in with a stabo rig or what have you, or a Swiss seat.
Yeah.
Good God Almighty. As we close out here to get into some of an important thing, an important operation, and some important men that occurred 53 years ago to this day, Jason was curious about seeing cockpit photos of view of a Huey having grease pencil marks on the windshield. It looked like. Could you explain what y'all used the grease pencils for on the windshields? And
well, we kept up with our hours and sorties, however many, whatever we were doing. And whether it was just ash and trash, or whether it was combat time, we'd put it on the windshield, and when we got back down, we could enter it into the logbook.
Okay. And I imagine some of the guys that had rockets and such, they probably made ad hoc bullseyes, I would imagine, wouldn't you think, there in the early days to kind of get their.
Could have. I don't recall anybody doing that, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure they used whatever they could.
I know the bird dog guys did, because they always said they'd get those Willie Peters to get to getting squirrely on them.
Well, right.
I guess we will transfer over into a more serious note here. We're going to talk a little bit about RT Kansas today, and in August 7th of 1971, RT Kansas was led by Lieutenant Lauren Festus Hagen and his 1-1 Sergeant Tony Anderson, the 1-2 Bruce Berg, and a strap hanger who is two strap hangers, one Sergeant Orrin Bingham, a very, very good recon man, and Sergeant Billy Queen and William Raimondi, two other really good recon men. As we're starting to set this up, and I hand it off to Mr. Barry to give his bird's eye view of what happened as he was there, I kind of want to give a little information here. John Caviani, as we know, was at Outpost Hickory, a little south of the DMZ, where he was sadly taken prisoner, and he earned his Medal of Honor, and Sergeant Jones ended up dying up there. RT Kansas was pretty much in that same area, let's say, a few clicks. So they're pretty much in the same area, a few months apart, exactly 2 months apart from when Mr. Caviani went through what he went through. So this area is notoriously hot, and rumor had it that recon team had earlier found a oil pipeline, and I've got pictures that I'll bring up in just a second. So about 14 men, including Indige, with the Americans I mentioned earlier, inserted on top of a hill to more or less find the pipeline, as I've been led to believe, and they stumbled upon it. And sadly, that's when the NVA saw the Hueys insert them and started calling everything they could. And they basically were up against an entire regiment, Colonel Sadler later learned, and they were at the counts of RT Kansas against 107-1 were their odds at that moment in time. 1 in 60 on the mountain, Car 15s, 40 Mike M79s, and they were fighting an entire regiment of the 300th. I had it right here. I apologize. The 304th. Yes, the 304th Division. I'm sure I may have gotten that wrong. Somebody will correct me. So it's a huge situation right here. This hill is going to be completely encircled by the NVA, and it's going to take a Spectre gunship mission running all night. Some amazing work by Tony Anderson and the man we're speaking to today to get the men out from that mountain. Mr. Barry, can you talk about a little bit about RT Kansas and what you went through that day and how it started?
I will. But Hickory, we were called out to get them at Hickory. But when we got out there, all of a sudden these Jolly Greens showed up and we were sent home. So we didn't get to do that extraction. And I never understood what happened. They just told us to go home. So, okay, that aside.
Wow.
It was a day like today. I mean, it's hot here in Houston, and it was hot then. And we went to CCN, and they said you got to launch immediately. I mean, we landed and we turned right around and took off. And we came up on the frequency of RT Kansas radios, and they were, of course, when they could, talking to the FAC and the Covey, and we were told to hold, and we were circling the rock pile, and so while we were circling, we're listening to the radio and the terror and it was just palpable, the anxiety we felt for them and for what we were about to have to do. So that circling, and Bill Walker 20 years ago sent an email talking about the real stress was when you're circling, waiting to go in, because you know it's going to be bad. So, any rate, when we got out there, the A1s were working the area, and they worked it until the fast movers came in, and the fast movers started really laying down heavy fire, but we're still holding it, and we held so long we had to go refuel and come back. And finally, they gave us the go ahead to go in, and that foreboding while you're circling the rock pile. I remember, I'm a believer, so I was thinking of Jesus in the garden, having sweat turn to blood as he is praying that this pass from him. And of course, I was praying for those that were on the ground and for us. And Lieutenant Byers was in the lead helicopter, and he commented that while he was holding, he was thinking, it was August 7th that my mother died. And I wonder if that'll be the same day I die. It was unlike any other mission that I went on. And so finally, they cut us loose to go in. And of course, by that time, Lieutenant Hagan and others were killed. And Lieutenant Byers and Mr. Kaufman went in, and they took out the dead and some of the dead and wounded. We couldn't get all the dead, and we pulled out. And then I was in Chalk 2, and myself and Michael Eslick pulled out the remaining 3 survivors. Now, that aside, we went back that afternoon to pick up the rest of the dead, and I think there were 3 or 4 bodies that we had to pick up. One they never found. But it was just so eerily quiet. And this was the old fire support base Scotch that had been abandoned. But it was eerily quiet, and there wasn't a shot fired. And we took out the rest of the bodies, and that was that for that. But, this memory was fragmented, but, Colonel Jacoby has gone to the effort of transcribing all the radio conversation that we had, and the transmission, the radio transmissions from the team RT Kansas started getting less and less, and finally it ended, and they went, you'd get a few sporadic transmissions on guard, which of course guard is the common frequency for everybody. But it was the most wrenching day of my life as we dealt with that. I don't think either one of us took any hits, but the anxiety of that was, and the sadness of it. And of course, I think you may have mentioned Lieutenant Hagan won the Medal of Honor. And I believe, according to Major Plaster, that was the last one in Vietnam.
Yes, sir.
But so the story that was related in the last stand of RT Kansas by
John Plaster
was, the aviation piece of it. I don't think he got that right, but I don't, because we were called out. It wasn't like we got there and took them out. It wasn't like that at all. And they did have the A1s in. So, the ARA had recorded that all the radio transmissions back and forth, coincidentally. And of course, that filled in the holes, and Mike Jacoby transcribed a good deal of that radio transmissions, because, when you hear them, they kind of get blurred and they're hard to understand. But when you see the transcription, it's clear what was going on.
That's what I was going to ask you. I know you're on a roll, and I hate to interject, but those of y'all, y'all have heard this audio. What's it like on there when it's going down like this? I mean, how are you keeping everything straight on that radio? I mean, it's a madhouse.
Well, I mean, it is, and typically, if the Peter pilot's flying, then the pilot is keeping up primarily with the radio, and or vice versa. But you hear the horror of what's going on the ground, and that's not the only time I've heard that, but there was just something about that always made an impression on me.
Gosh almighty. So, I mean, and that's one thing we've actually, I'm glad you mentioned the Jolly Greens, because we've actually got a great contact now with the 30 a member who has a family member that served with the 37th AARS that was doing a lot of these missions. We've actually got information on two of the RT Alabama, or ST and RT Alabama recovery missions. So I'm going to try and see if we can get some information about what was going on with the Jolly Greens and y'all not being able to go in on that, because I have heard y'all mention in the thread about that. That's very strange. When everything's going in, are y'all do y'all go back? You get them on the mountaintop, y'all go back. Are y'all hearing all this go down and immediately spun up, or what's that process like to get back in the air to see if y'all are going to get in or not get in?
Well, we were, I mean, Covey and the fact are the guys that determine when and if you go in, and they wanted the fast movers to finish their work, and then the fast movers had to go and rearm, and that's when they sent us in, and the fast movers got back out, and they were wanting to shoot the place up again, and we've got helicopters in the area, so we relied on the guns, the Cobras, to kind of guide us in and go in with us, and you get those Cobras, one on either side of you, and there's a sense of well-being that they provide. That certainly, if you were going in without them, you wouldn't have that sense of well-being.
And I'm not sure. I've just found out the Pink Panthers were on one of the missions that I've been researching that I didn't know about, and we've got two contacts with the Pink Panthers Cobra pilots, and I'm trying to figure out. Do you by chance know if these were Marine snakes or Army snakes
that were with us at RT Kansas?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they were Army.
Okay, wow. I believe I may have actually seen that somewhere mentioned the 361st may have been the snakes escorting y'all, and if that's the case, I might have it remembering incorrectly, but I believe our prior guest, Mr. Woody Woodard, was one of y'all support birds, Panther 27. So let me write that down so I can.
Well, he would know if that was the recording of the radios.
I think that this is going to be crazy, but I think it is, because he's actually resent that to me, and I said Colonel Jacoby's got it, and he said, "Well, that's who I got it from." And I think we're going to pin this together here. This is very interesting. Right. So I mean, it really goes as bad as it can. I mean, as I said, they're surrounded on all sides of the mountain. They've called up initial reinforcements, as I said, the number is 107 to 1. They've only got one M60, and the rest of the guys are CAR 15s, AK 47s, and it's sadly Lieutenant Hagan is hit pretty early on after 3 a.m. They start to hear trucks unloading, and they know it's go time because they're actually bringing truck full of troops up to the mountain. And sadly, that's when Mr. Anderson, Bill Ramundi, and Bill Queen, not Bill Ramundi, Ramundi and Queen had to start taking over, and thank goodness they did. Bruce Berg is the man who was not found, as you mentioned, because there was a bright light that was sent in. And do you have any info? Were you around for the bright light to go in for the survivor or the bodies, shall we say?
Yeah, my recollection, is that we went in and there was it was completely quiet. Wherever they went. And I guess they were going to let us go in and get our bodies. And that bright light is familiar, but I can't remember exactly how that played into it.
We've I've got a few pictures of the men, pretty famous men. Jimmy Johnson right here of RT Georgia, and I believe Crusader, who was later with Nick Brockhausen. He went on, and Colonel Donnie Belfie is the man who launched the bright light. Thank goodness, because a lot of guys were worried that they were going to get the bodies and desecrate them or what have you. Noel Gast went in from RT Idaho, very legendary recon man. And the last one that went in with the guys was Engine Adams, here with Colonel Maggie, another solid recon man. I've heard rumors, and I can't verify. I'm just going to put it out there as a probable. One of the men was shot and killed execution style when he was captured. And it seems like another man, and I'm blanking on his name. They may have thought, no, I'm mixing something up. Completely forget that. I was thinking of a prior story about someone being captured. Totally forget that. Everybody was recovered.
But we inserted that bright light team.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's my recollection. And then I guess they went and got the bodies, and we pulled them out. That's
when that happens with the bright light. Is it to an evac hospital? Is it back to the compound so they can secure the bodies and get sterile stuff off, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, we took them back to CCN, is my recollection, and I'm sure they took them to the morgue or I forget what you call it, but
that would make much more sense considering what all they had on them, and the story not needing to get out of what was going on. So how long do you think from initial insert to when you got the bright light team home, how long was the RT Kansas mission, shall we say?
Well, there was a lull in there before we took in the bright light team. So from the time we launched to go get them, and we got and we brought that first load back, it seemed like it was 2 or 3 years. It was such a long period of time. The reality is probably 4 hours.
Wow, man.
But just that, it just seemed like it lasted forever.
I can't imagine with the adrenaline you're built up and you're wanting to get in there and help the guys, or at least get them out, and you're having to sit on your thumbs and just wait.
That God's Own Lunatics, I'm sure everybody's heard that, or most people have. And he talks about pilots seeming so calm and relaxed as you're pulling them out of a firefight. You are. And I was talking about the anxiety I felt while we were circling. Once we were cleared to go in, then all of a sudden there was a sense of complete calmness as your training and all of the learning experience that you've gotten from your the older Lancers kicks in, and you're focused on what you're doing. All of a sudden, it's you're at your whole demeanor changes as you go in, and you're finally released to do what you know. That circling is just horrible.
Gosh almighty. Y'all sitting there, it's just can't imagine. Like Mr. Terry said, in situations like that, a few minutes can easily seem like hours and hours.
Oh gosh, yes, it was.
Especially on the ground, I can only imagine.
Oh well,
Mr. I just went completely blank on what I was about to ask you. God, when when all of that went on, RT Kansas and all of that, are you immediately thrown back into rotation, or with this big situation that's gone on, are you given a little bit of a break due to the seriousness of the situation?
No.
Wow.
Yeah. No, you're just back to doing whatever you're doing. Yeah. No, there's no. Now, like I say, we'd go back to the officers' club, and you'd recount that story with the chicken plate in the pilot's chair. And of course, anytime you screw up, they pour beer on you. And, it sounds stupid, but I think it was cathartic.
Oh, God.
To have that release. And, there's just something that I think was of value to us. So you'd go through that, and then the next day you'd do whatever you do.
Wow. It's, I mean, getting it off your chest amongst men who have done similar things, or at least flying and doing things like you're doing, it's got to help. You can't keep stuff like that bottled up, or it's going to eat you alive inside out.
Right. I don't know who came up with that, but whoever it was, I'm thankful for it, because I think that that's what we did. Is we'd come in and we would release it. Now this particular thing, RT Kansas, while parts of it were always fresh in my mind, when Bill Walker sent that email about holding and the anxiety, that was an incredible release to me, and that was 30 years after the fact, or more. But it was because then I immediately thought back about that day or today. So,
did you, as we're starting to close up, because I've gone way over our time limit, did you either in between depositing, coming back with the bright light team, or coming back with the initial load, and bringing the bright light team to CCN, at any point in that time, do you get to speak to either any of the bright light men, any of the Americans from Kansas that are alive, about what's happened? Did anybody speak in the helo, or was it just get us home, please?
Well, the only talking that I recall, of course, they don't have microphone. I mean, so it goes through the crew chief or the gunner. We had to be sure that the LZ was clean before we pulled off. So there was that interaction and they were assuring us that they were the last survivors, and that the LZ was clean and we could go ahead and leave.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank goodness y'all got everybody out of there and home. Sadly, dead or alive, except for Mr.
Yep.
Bruce Berg. And I'm hoping one day we're finding guys. As a matter of fact, the past 3 weeks, there's been 2 airmen and I believe Air Force Commando that's been found. So always keeping our hopes up for that, especially for the families. And speaking of, to kind of end that on a lighter note, and I'll let you close with whatever you would like to close with. Didn't you have an incident to where a 1-0 accidentally forgot to count?
Yeah. Well, there was it was a ladder extraction, and Chalk 1 went in, Lieutenant McGar, and he's saying taking mortar fire, and then Chalk 2 goes in, he's taking mortar fire. Chalk 3 goes, I'm Chalk 4. I've got the medic with me, and Chalk 3 goes in, and he's taking fire, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I got to go in. So, at any rate, they thought it was the LZ was clean, so I'm not going to have to go in. Well, they did a head count and said, no, there's one still on the ground, so you're going to have to go in. Well, I wasn't anxious to do that, but I came back around and I started my final, and I thought, well, I keyed and asked that they do another head count. Well, it turns out the 1-0 failed to count himself, so I didn't have to go in after all. But yeah, it was I figured they certainly, after 3 helicopters, they had to have that LZ bracketed in with the mortars, but I was going to catch one right in the rotor is what I had it in my mind. That's what was going to happen. But,
good Lord.
But alas, we got out without taking a hit in the rotor. Now, Mr. Lane took a hit in the rotor from an RPG, and we had to go get him out. And that was the only time I took air bursts, and that was in Laos.
Air bursts, good Lord.
Yeah, there's a ladder extraction. There's some controversy, but you can see we were flying without our doors, the pilot doors at the time.
Wow.
Which I particularly liked. It gave us better vision.
Wow. I don't see that too many times. That's the first time I've noticed that in this photo. And guys, if you're ever trying to get the ID on a Lancer bird, that white dot right there, always a Lancer right there.
Yes, sir.
That is a Lancer dot.
Meatball.
Oh yeah, that's how you know that's them. We've got a few photos of Mr. Barry that I would like to show off, that he graciously allowed us to show, and we can close out. This is one of my favorites because a lot of the guys are in their party suits. Always loved y'all and y'all's party suits.
Yep, 17 Lancers.
And
that's the officers club too.
I was about to say that's got to be the club.
Yeah, it was Spartan, but it was ours.
Hey, I mean, heck, you got a TV, an air conditioner, and cold beer and tables. You don't need much more than that.
How does it get better? So I'm there by the yellow sign where it says next. I don't know why that's there, but Farmer's on my left. If you're looking at it, he's on the right, and then Ruck's on the other side. And it was their going away party.
Oh, okay. And there's Rowdy Yates. That's a name.
Okay, so Yates was the pilot that flew us on the ropes.
Okay, there we go then. That's Rowdy.
He was a number 1 lead. I think he was 19.
Jeez Louise. Wow. That's, again, I mean, young guys. I mean, although a lot of y'all look pretty aged by now, but still young as can be.
Yeah.
There's a
well, and in that picture, if you go back,
let's see, jeez.
And I know we're running short of time, but
I think I just.
that's all right. So one of those guys, Dana Lane, he had the distinction of being shot down on his first combat mission and being shot down on his last combat mission.
I remember Colonel Jacob bringing that up, and I was like, "Good Lord, what a way to enter and what a way to leave."
That's me and Ruck.
And as you can see, guys, Lancer patch right here, and if you notice, he's got his CCN bomb burst patch on right there. Prairie Fire.
The one I didn't have my Lancer patch on. I have to think on that. It may have been new guy.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I just noticed you didn't have it on. Maybe I was about to say, maybe you literally are just there and didn't get it sewn on yet. Or maybe you're not. Did you have it on all of your uniforms?
Yeah. It seems like.
Heck, you may have been fresh in, as they say. Oh. There's one right here. I was trying to figure out. No, that's the next one. This is in the bird. And I was going to see if you could answer about a minigun. Nice mustache there. Did y'all have mustache regulations? We heard some of the guys had to keep it at the corner of the lip and all that.
I'm sure we did. When I grew that, I have no idea other than I could. It wasn't a particular look that I was going for, but I think it was just because I could.
I think y'all's old the Robin Olds mustache. I think that style for the aviators back in the day was top notch. I think
Right.
y'all really had it going on. Terry said, "Looks like a drunk frat party."
Well, it was that.
Phi Beta Choppa. And we've got one more here, and I will let Mr. Barry close us out since he's graced us with so much of his time today. Well, here's this one. Did y'all have minigun on the Lancer birds? I don't know if I found this on the Lancer page.
No, we had two M60s on either side.
Okay, that may have been a totally different web
Now
page.
we use those to spray Agent Orange too. I mean, they would create. We'd hook speakers onto them and do those
psyops. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, those birds were used for all manners of things.
Holy cow! Workhorses.
Yeah. Well, there's John Jones. He got me in trouble. We got out of it, but the MPs were involved.
Oh Lord, that's good. I'm glad y'all got out of it too.
Yeah,
that's good.
There was a window involved, but
is there people are already hoping you'll come back to see us and visit with us. Is there anything you'd like to close out with today?
You brought up Hickory, and that's always been a mystery to me. If you research that and you come up with because my recollection was that there was a Russian helicopter in the area, and it's such a shroud of secrecy to me that I have no idea what was going on. We were all set to go in and be done. I mean, it was another anxious. It wasn't like RT Kansas to that extent, but it was palpable, the concern of going in.
I'm really glad we found this out because, or you mentioned it because, Jason, as you heard, we've gotten a little bit of information here. I think we can actually dig up some stuff, at least some stuff that's not in the open from our contact with the family member of the 37th AARS. So I'll start digging into that, and whatever we can dig up, I'll send your way.
Okay, I'd appreciate it because that's always been a mystery. And if you come across any of those guys that we pulled out, I would love to hook up with them.
I do know a man that's been on here before that was on Hickory, but I have not made any contact with any Kansas men. I do know somebody that has, and I'll see if we can maybe connect or at least get an email going. But I do know Mr. Ralph Morgan that made it off Hickory. And he always thanks all of you guys because he had the Lancers fly him a few times in country. And he said to tell you guys thank you for all y'all did because he'd be still in Laos if it wasn't for you guys.
Yeah, and I'll tell you about, if I ever come back, I'll tell you about the time the CCN team took friendly fire from Cobras.
Oh,
yeah, it was terrible.
I'm writing that down right now. We're definitely going to set up a return for you. Yeah. All right. Y'all heard it there, guys. We're going to get him back because I know y'all are starting to come in with questions after listening. So, we'll close it out today. I want to thank you for spending an hour and a half with us. I know we went a little long, but everyone was grateful to hear. We're getting tons of thank yous I'll share with you, but we'll keep in touch. I'll start investigating the Jolly Green stuff, and maybe once I get something I can send to you, we can set up a part 2 return for you.
Whatever you think, bud, but I appreciate the opportunity to tell my tale, and so
we appreciate
especially
you
on a day like today.
Absolutely. It's a big piece of history, and I'm very glad you were able to come on and share. And as you said, to honor this day and keep the memory of RT Kansas alive. We want to thank you for sharing your story. So, guys, y'all have a great day. Mr. Berry, thank you. Everyone's saying thank you. And we'll definitely have him back. So we'll see you guys later and have a good day.
See you, bud.
See you.